I never imagined that the man I loved would be the one to break me. At first, everything seemed perfect, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built together, the quiet moments that felt like they would last forever. I was hopeful, believing in us, in the life we were creating side by side. I trusted him with my heart, my future, and even my possessions, thinking that love meant sharing everything, including the burdens and the joys. But slowly, cracks began to appear in the foundation of our relationship. It started with small things, a forgotten promise here, a broken plan there. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that love would heal the wounds. I tolerated the little disappointments because I believed in the bigger picture. I thought that love was about patience, about standing by someone even when things got hard. Then came the day that shattered everything. I found out he had sold my car, the one I had saved for years to buy, the one that gave me freedom and independence. He didn't ask me, didn't tell me. He just sold it, as if it were nothing more than a piece of furniture to be discarded. I was stunned. I couldn't believe someone I loved so deeply could make such a decision without even telling me. I tolerated that too, but the betrayals didn't stop there. Not long after, I discovered he had sold my diamond ring and my jewelry, the very symbols of our love and commitment. Those pieces weren't just valuable, they held memories, moments, frozen in time. Each ring, each necklace, was a chapter of my life, a testament to the promises we made. And yet, he sold them without a word, without a hint of remorse. I tolerated that as well. How far can one person tolerate before breaking? How much betrayal can a heart endure before it shatters into pieces too small to mend? These questions haunted me in the quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts. I felt lost, confused, and deeply hurt. The man I had trusted, the man I had loved, had become a stranger, someone who saw me not as a partner, but as a resource to be exploited. I stood at a crossroads, torn between the pain of what had happened and the fear of what was to come. I wondered if I was weak for staying, if I was foolish for hoping things could change. But beneath the hurt, a small spark of something else began to grow, a flicker of strength, a whisper of self-worth that refused to be silenced. This is not just a story of betrayal. It is a story of awakening, of learning to see the truth, no matter how painful, of finding the courage to say enough, of reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my freedom. If you've ever felt trapped by someone you loved, if you've ever questioned your own worth because of someone else's actions, then this story is for you. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are fought not in the world outside, but within our own hearts. Stay with me, because what comes next is a journey from pain to power, from silence to voice, from tolerance to transformation. And I promise you, it's a story you won't want to miss. Before the cracks began to show, our relationship was a story I told myself over and over, a story of love, hope, and shared dreams. We met in a way that felt like fate, two souls crossing paths at the right moment. I was drawn to his charm, his laughter, the way he made me feel seen and valued. For a while, it was everything I had ever wanted. In those early days, I gave my heart freely, without hesitation. I believed in us, in the future we could build together. I was patient, understanding, and willing to make sacrifices because love, I thought, was about giving without keeping score. I worked hard, saved every penny, and dreamed of a life where we could both thrive. I never imagined that the man I loved would be the one to break me. At first, everything seemed perfect, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built together, the quiet moments that felt like they would last forever. I was hopeful, believing in us, in the life we were creating side by side. I trusted him with my heart, my future, and even my possessions, thinking that love meant sharing everything, including the burdens and the joys. But slowly, cracks began to appear in the foundation of our relationship. It started with small things, a forgotten promise here, a broken plan there. I told myself it was just a rough patch, that love would heal the wounds. I tolerated the little disappointments because I believed in the bigger picture. I thought that love was about patience, about standing by someone even when things got hard. Then came the day that shattered everything. I found out he had sold my car, the one I had saved for years to buy, the one that gave me freedom and independence. He didn't ask me, didn't tell me. He just sold it, as if it were nothing more than a piece of furniture to be discarded. I was stunned. I couldn't believe someone I loved so deeply could make such a decision without even telling me. I tolerated that too, but the betrayals didn't stop there. Not long after, I discovered he had sold my diamond ring and my jewelry, the very symbols of our love and commitment. Those pieces weren't just valuable, they held memories, moments, frozen in time. Each ring, each necklace, was a chapter of my life, a testament to the promises we made. And yet, he sold them without a word, without a hint of remorse. I tolerated that as well. How far can one person tolerate before breaking? How much betrayal can a heart endure before it shatters into pieces too small to mend? These questions haunted me in the quiet moments when I was alone with my thoughts. I felt lost, confused, and deeply hurt. The man I had trusted, the man I had loved, had become a stranger, someone who saw me not as a partner, but as a resource to be exploited. I stood at a crossroads, torn between the pain of what had happened and the fear of what was to come. I wondered if I was weak for staying, if I was foolish for hoping things could change. But beneath the hurt, a small spark of something else began to grow, a flicker of strength, a whisper of self-worth that refused to be silenced. This is not just a story of betrayal. It is a story of awakening, of learning to see the truth, no matter how painful, of finding the courage to say enough, of reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my freedom. If you've ever felt trapped by someone you loved, if you've ever questioned your own worth because of someone else's actions, then this story is for you. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are fought not in the world outside, but within our own hearts. Stay with me, because what comes next is a journey from pain to power, from silence to voice, from tolerance to transformation. And I promise you, it's a story you won't want to miss. Before the cracks began to show, our relationship was a story I told myself over and over, a story of love, hope, and shared dreams. We met in a way that felt like fate, two souls crossing paths at the right moment. I was drawn to his charm, his laughter, the way he made me feel seen and valued. For a while, it was everything I had ever wanted. In those early days, I gave my heart freely, without hesitation. I believed in us, in the future we could build together. I was patient, understanding, and willing to make sacrifices because love, I thought, was about giving without keeping score. I worked hard, saved every penny, and dreamed of a life where we could both thrive. But sometimes, the greatest act of love is learning to love yourself enough to say no. It was an ordinary day, or at least it should have been. I remember waking up with a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, things would feel a little lighter. But that hope was shattered the moment I stepped outside. My car, the one I had saved for years to buy, the one that gave me freedom and independence, was gone. The driveway was empty, the space where it had always been parked now hauntingly bare. At first I thought maybe I had forgotten where I'd parked it, but the sinking feeling in my stomach told me otherwise. I called him, my voice trembling as I asked, "Where's the car?" His answer was cold, almost indifferent. "I sold it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You what?" "I sold it. We needed the money." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there, stunned, unable to process the betrayal. How could he sell something that belonged to me without even telling me, without asking, without a single word of warning? I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. Was this real? Was this happening to me? I wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers, but all I could do was stand there, numb. That was just the beginning. A few days later, I noticed something else was missing. My diamond ring, the one he had given me when we first got engaged, the symbol of our love and commitment, was gone. Along with it, my other jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, all the pieces I had treasured, all the memories they held, vanished. When I confronted him, his excuses were weak and rehearsed. "I needed the money," he said again, as if that justified everything. But it didn't. Not to me. I felt betrayed in a way I never thought possible. The things he sold weren't just possessions, they were pieces of my life, my identity, and he had taken them from me without a second thought. The shock was overwhelming. I kept asking myself, how could he do this? Why didn't he come to me? Did I mean so little to him that he could just take what was mine? I was drowning in a sea of emotions, anger, sadness, disbelief, confusion. I wanted to understand, to find some reason that made sense, but there was none, only the cold, hard truth of betrayal. I remember sitting on the floor of our living room, clutching the empty space where my ring used to be on my finger, tears streaming down my face. The silence around me was deafening, filled with the weight of everything that had been lost. In that moment, I realized something had to change. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay. I couldn't keep tolerating the pain, the lies, the betrayal. But I was scared. Scared of what would happen if I stood up for myself. Scared of losing the man I loved, even though he was breaking me piece by piece. That day marked the turning point, the moment when my world shifted. When the illusion of love was stripped away to reveal a painful reality. It was the moment I had to decide, continue to tolerate, or fight back. After the shock of discovering my car and jewelry had been sold without my consent, I thought things couldn't get worse. But I was wrong. The betrayal was only the beginning of a long, painful descent into a world I barely recognized, a world filled with manipulation, lies, and emotional torment. At first, I tried to understand him. I told myself that maybe he was under pressure, that he was struggling with things he couldn't share. I wanted to believe that beneath the surface, the man I loved was still there, fighting his own battles. So, I tolerated his behavior, hoping that with patience and love, things would improve. But his actions grew more destructive. He started disappearing for hours, sometimes days, without explanation. When I asked where he had been, his answers were vague or angry. He accused me of not trusting him, of being controlling. I felt trapped in a cycle of guilt and confusion, questioning my own feelings and sanity. The emotional manipulation was subtle at first, almost imperceptible. He would say things like, "If you really loved me, you wouldn't question me," or, "You're the reason I'm like this." Those words cut deep, making me doubt myself and my worth. I began to walk on eggshells, careful not to upset him, hoping to avoid the outbursts that followed. And then came the financial control. He demanded access to my bank accounts, insisted on managing the money I worked so hard to save. When I hesitated, he accused me of hiding things, of not being committed to our future. I felt powerless, watching as he slowly took control of everything, my finances, my time, my emotions. I remember the nights lying awake, heart pounding, wondering if I was losing myself. The woman who once dreamed of freedom and happiness was now a shadow, consumed by fear and doubt. I felt isolated, even when surrounded by people. I was alone in a relationship that was supposed to be my safe haven. Despite everything, I still held on to hope. I told myself that love meant sacrifice, that if I just tried harder, things would get better. I ignored the warning signs, the red flags waving in the wind. I convinced myself that his behavior was temporary, that he was struggling and needed my support. But the truth was undeniable. He sold my car and jewelry without a second thought. He lied to me, manipulated me, and controlled me. And every time I tried to confront him, he turned the tables, making me feel like the problem. The emotional toll was immense. I found myself crying in silence, hiding my pain behind forced smiles. I lost interest in the things I once loved, withdrawing from friends and family. I felt like I was drowning, struggling to keep my head above water, while the weight of his actions pulled me down. There were moments when I wanted to scream, to run away, to break free, but fear held me back. Fear of being alone, fear of the unknown, fear of losing the life I had built. I was caught in a web of love and pain, unable to see a way out. The tension in our home grew unbearable. Arguments erupted over the smallest things, each one leaving scars that didn't heal. He would lash out, then apologize with empty words and promises that never came true. I was stuck in a cycle of hope and despair, love and hurt. One night, after a particularly harsh fight, I sat alone in the dark, my heart aching. I realized that I was no longer living for myself, but for the man who was slowly destroying me. I was sacrificing my happiness, my dignity, and my peace for a love that was one-sided and painful. That was the moment I knew I had to make a choice. I could continue to tolerate the abuse, pretending that things would change, or I could find the strength to stand up for myself. It wasn't an easy decision. The fear of losing him, of facing the unknown, was overwhelming. But the pain of staying was greater. I began to see the truth clearly, that love should never hurt this much, that I deserved respect and kindness, that my worth was not defined by someone else's actions. The journey ahead was uncertain and frightening, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a hope that I could reclaim my life, my happiness, and my freedom. In the midst of the storm, when everything felt like it was falling apart, I found unexpected lifelines, people who reminded me that I was not alone, that there was hope beyond the pain. These were the friends, family members, and counselors who became my anchors, offering support, advice, and a safe space to heal. At first, I was hesitant to reach out. Shame and fear kept me silent, convinced that no one would understand or that I was somehow to blame for the chaos in my life. But slowly, I began to open up to a few trusted people, those who had always been there, quietly watching, waiting for me to ask for help. My closest friend, Sarah, was the first to notice the change in me. She saw past the forced smiles and the carefully hidden tears. One afternoon, over coffee, she gently asked, "Are you okay? You don't have to pretend with me." Her words were like a lifeline thrown into the dark waters I was drowning in. With Sarah's encouragement, I started to share the truth, the lies, the betrayals, the emotional toll. She listened without judgment, offering comfort and strength. "You deserve better," she said firmly. "You're not alone in this." Her unwavering support gave me the courage to reach out to my sister, Emily. Emily had always been a pillar of strength in our family, someone who faced her own challenges with grace and resilience. When I told her what was happening, she didn't hesitate. "We'll get through this together," she promised. Emily helped me see the situation from a new perspective. She reminded me that love should never come at the cost of my dignity or safety. She encouraged me to set boundaries and to prioritize my well-being. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. Around the same time, I sought professional help. Meeting with a counselor was one of the hardest steps I took, but also one of the most healing. My counselor, Dr. Martinez, provided a safe, non-judgmental space where I could unpack the complex emotions I was carrying. Through our sessions, I began to understand the patterns of manipulation and control that had trapped me. Dr. Martinez helped me rebuild my self-esteem and develop strategies to protect myself emotionally and financially. She reminded me that healing is a journey, not a destination, and that every step forward was a victory. The support from these allies was a stark contrast to the toxicity I had endured, where my partner's words had been sharp and dismissive. My friends' and family's words were gentle and affirming. Where I had felt isolated and powerless, I now felt connected and empowered. Their presence reminded me that I was worthy of love and respect, not just from others, but from myself. They helped me see that I didn't have to face this battle alone, and that asking for help was a sign of strength, not weakness. With their encouragement, I began to take small but significant steps toward reclaiming my life. I reconnected with old friends, started pursuing hobbies I had abandoned, and slowly rebuilt the parts of myself that had been lost. Each conversation, each moment of support, was a reminder that there was a life beyond the pain, a life filled with hope, healing, and possibility. For so long, I had been caught in a cycle of pain and hope, of betrayal and forgiveness. I tolerated his actions, excused his behavior, and convinced myself that love meant sacrifice even when it cost me my peace, my dignity, and my happiness. But there came a moment, a quiet yet powerful moment, when everything changed. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a sudden revelation. It was a stillness inside me, a clarity that cut through the fog of confusion and fear. I realized that I had been living for someone else's needs, someone else's desires, and in doing so, I had lost sight of my own worth. That morning, I woke up feeling different. The weight that had pressed down on my chest for so long was lighter, as if a door had been opened inside me, letting in fresh air and light. I looked in the mirror and saw not just the tired woman I had become, but the woman I was meant to be, strong, worthy, and deserving of respect. I thought about the car he sold, the jewelry he pawned, the lies he told, and the pain he caused. I thought about the nights I cried alone, the moments I felt invisible, and the dreams I had buried deep inside. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that I could no longer tolerate this. I made a decision to reclaim my life, to stand up for myself, and to say, enough. It wasn't easy. The fear of what would come next was overwhelming. I worried about being alone, about the unknown future, about the judgment of others, but the fear of staying, of continuing to live in pain and silence was far greater. I began to set boundaries, small at first, but firm and unwavering. I stopped answering his calls when they were filled with blame and manipulation. I refused to engage in arguments that left me feeling small and powerless. I started saying no to demands that drained me emotionally and financially. Each boundary was a victory, a step toward freedom, and with each step, my confidence grew. I reached out to my support network more often, leaning on friends, family, and my counselor. Their encouragement fueled my courage, reminding me that I was not alone and that I deserved better. One afternoon, I sat down with him and spoke with a calmness I hadn't known I possessed. I told him how his actions had hurt me, how I could no longer accept the betrayal and disrespect. I told him that I was choosing myself, my happiness, my peace, my future. He reacted with anger and disbelief, trying to guilt me, to make me doubt my decision. But this time, I stood firm. I didn't waver or apologize. I held my ground, knowing that this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment I reclaimed my power. Walking away from that conversation, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Sadness for what was lost, but relief for what was gained, my freedom. The days that followed were challenging. There were moments of doubt, loneliness, and fear. But there were also moments of joy, discovery, and growth. I rediscovered passions I had set aside, reconnected with people who truly cared, and began to envision a future filled with possibility. I learned that empowerment isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about feeling the fear and choosing to move forward anyway. It's about recognizing your worth and refusing to settle for less. This turning point was not just about ending a toxic relationship. It was about beginning a new chapter, one where I was the author of my own story, the guardian of my own happiness. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. The days following my decision to reclaim my life were unlike anything I had experienced in years. The heavy fog of confusion and pain began to lift, replaced by a clarity and calm I hadn't known was possible. It was as if I had been living in a cage, and now, the door was wide open. The conflict that had consumed so much of my energy, my heart, and my mind was finally coming to an end. I was no longer a prisoner to his destructive behavior or his emotional manipulation. I had taken back control not just of my circumstances, but of my very self. Victory didn't come with fanfare or dramatic declarations. It came quietly, in the small moments of peace and self-respect that I allowed myself to embrace. It was in the first night I slept without fear. The first morning I woke up feeling hopeful. The first time I looked in the mirror and smiled at the woman staring back. I began to rebuild my life piece by piece. I reconnected with old friends who had been waiting patiently for me to return. I pursued hobbies and passions I had long neglected: painting, reading, even taking long walks in the park, savoring the simple joy of being free. Financially, I took steps to protect myself. I closed joint accounts, set up new ones in my name alone, and sought advice on managing my money independently. Each action was a declaration. I was no longer dependent, no longer vulnerable to exploitation. Emotionally, I found strength in therapy and in the support of those who truly cared. I learned to forgive myself for the time I had lost, for the pain I had endured, and for the mistakes I had made. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing what happened. It was about freeing myself from the chains of resentment. There were moments of sadness, of course, grieving the loss of what I had hoped for, mourning the love that wasn't meant to be, but those moments were balanced by a growing sense of empowerment and self-worth. I realized that victory wasn't about winning a battle against someone else. It was about winning the battle within, reclaiming my dignity, my voice, and my right to happiness. Acceptance came with understanding. I accepted that some people are not meant to stay in our lives, no matter how much we want them to. I accepted that love should never come at the cost of our well-being, and I accepted that my future was mine to shape, free from the shadows of the past. This resolution was not an end, but a new beginning, a chance to live authentically, to love myself fully, and to embrace the possibilities ahead. As I look back on my journey, I am filled with gratitude for the pain that taught me resilience, for the support that lifted me up, and for the courage that carried me through. I am no longer defined by the betrayals or the losses. I am defined by my strength, my growth, and my unwavering commitment to myself. This is my victory. This is my freedom. And this is my story. As I sit here now, reflecting on everything I've been through, I realize how much this journey has changed me, not just on the surface, but deep within my soul. The pain, the betrayal, the struggle to reclaim my life, all of it has shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than I ever thought possible. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that self-worth cannot be measured by the love or approval of others. For so long, I believed that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, and tolerated enough, I would earn the love I deserved. But love that requires you to lose yourself is not love at all. It's a transaction, a burden, a cage. I've learned that boundaries are not walls to keep people out, but bridges to protect your heart. Saying no is not selfish. It's an act of and sometimes, the greatest act of love you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from what harms you. This journey has taught me the power of resilience. Even when I felt broken, I found pieces of myself that refused to give up. I discovered that healing is not linear, it's messy, painful, and slow, but every step forward is a victory, and every day is a new chance to choose yourself. I've also come to understand the importance of community. The friends, family, and counselors who stood by me were not just support systems, they were lifelines. They reminded me that I am not alone, that my story matters, and that together we can overcome even the darkest times. Looking ahead, I am filled with hope and excitement. I have plans, big and small, to live a life that honors who I am and what I've been through. I want to travel, to explore new places and cultures. I want to reconnect with old passions and discover new ones. I want to build relationships based on mutual respect, kindness, and genuine love. But most of all, I want to continue growing emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. I want to be a beacon of strength for others who may be walking a similar path. I want to share my story, not just as a tale of pain, but as a testament to the power of self-love and transformation. To anyone watching this, I want you to know this. You are worthy. Your pain does not define you. Your past does not dictate your future. No matter how dark the night, the dawn will come. And when it does, you have the power to rise, to heal, and to reclaim your life. If you are in a situation where you feel trapped, unloved, or invisible, please remember that help is available. Reach out to someone you trust. Seek support. You don't have to face this alone, and you deserve a life filled with respect, joy, and freedom. This story is not just mine. It belongs to anyone who has ever felt lost and found their way back. It is a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and hardship, there is hope, there is strength, and there is a future waiting to be written by you. Thank you for listening to my journey. I hope it inspires you to take the first step toward your own healing and empowerment. Remember, the most important person you have to love and protect is yourself. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. Sharing this journey with you means more than words can express. If my experience has touched you, inspired you, or even made you feel less alone, I invite you to join this community of strength and healing. Your story matters. Every one of us has faced challenges, heartbreaks, and moments when we felt lost or powerless. But together, we can turn those moments into sources of strength and hope. I encourage you to share your own experiences in the comments below. Your voice could be the light someone else needs to find their way. Don't hesitate to open up. This is a safe space where we support each other without judgment. Whether you've faced betrayal, struggled with self-worth, or are just beginning your journey toward empowerment, your story is important. By sharing, you help build a community where healing and growth are possible. If you found value in this video, please give it a like. It helps others who might be going through similar struggles find this channel and know they're not alone. And if you want to hear more real-life stories of courage, resilience, and transformation, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are many more stories waiting to be told, stories that will inspire you, challenge you, and remind you of the power within us all. Remember, healing is a journey, and no one should walk it alone. By subscribing, you become part of a growing family that uplifts and empowers each other every step of the way. Also, if you know someone who might benefit from hearing this story, please share this video with them. Sometimes, the smallest act of sharing can make the biggest difference in someone's life. Together, we can create a space where love, respect, and self-worth are celebrated. A space where every person knows they deserve happiness and freedom. Thank you again for being here. I'm honored to share this journey with you, and I look forward to hearing your stories and growing together. Until next time, take care of yourself, because you are worth it.